game publishing. So you know about this, right? The majority of the time that you see a game, unless it's an indie game, you're going to have your developer. Those are the folks who made it. And then the publisher. They didn't make it, but they basically, well, they're publishing it, right? As the name might suggest. Now, what is the role of the publisher? Essentially, they're the ones that are supposed to provide the funding, and they're supposed to be the ones that are taking more of the risk. When you just have a developer that is doing their own publishing, a lot of the times that doesn't work out very well because they're going to have to take that risk, and a lot of the times developing teams, they really can't take that financial risk. But it turns out the actual CEO of a publishing company, he just sat down with an interview, and he basically talked about how a lot of these game publishing contracts are really not very fair, and he's not arguing in terms of the publisher from their standpoint. He's talking about from the developer's standpoint. He is saying as a publisher that these game developers are kind of getting screwed off of some of these deals. And this is the CEO of a game publishing company called Hooded Horse. I love that name. I don't know if I've ever heard of them before, but I have heard of one of the games they have published, Manor Lords. This actually just came out. Well, okay, actually, I was going to say it just came out. Never mind. It came out in April 2024. Okay, it's been out for a while. Definitely been on my list of games I want to play. It looks pretty cool. And so this is one of the games that Hooded Horse publishes for, and you can see right here the CEO of Hooded Horse, that is Tim Bender. So he is the person who sat down with PC Gamer, and we got this article right here from PC Gamer that resulted from that interview. So this was published 3 days ago. Talks about a lot of different stuff, but yeah, the main thing that really stuck out was his comments on game contracts. So this is kind of the main section right here. It says one of the things that stands out about Hooded Horse is its approach to contracts, offering very favorable terms to developers. It is where Bender's legal background comes in handy. So he says the ways in which game publishing contracts are generally written violate a lot of principles of what is an efficient contract. It says he was taught that there are principles involved in how contracts should be done that help everyone, but in the video game industry, contracts often favor the publisher at the expense of the developer. Now, I thought this was a pretty big deal when I saw this. Now, I do think it is worth mentioning that some might kind of see this article, or at least just the whole thing with Tim sitting down and kind of talking about this, talking favorably about Hooded Horse. I mean, that kind of could be considered something where he obviously has an incentive to be, talking about this, right? Oh, Hooded Horse does it better, and the way that game publishing contracts are developed outside of Hooded Horse, that is inefficient. Yeah, obviously he could kind of have some sort of a bias there. So I suppose take it with a grain of salt, but I do think that this is still very interesting nonetheless. I think there is a lot of truth to this, because essentially the argument that he gives is that a lot of these contracts, they really are unfairly favoring the publisher rather than the developer. The whole point of the publisher is that they are supposed to bear a lot of the financial risks and obviously share a lot of the revenue with the developers, but he is saying that a lot of these contracts, they often force developers apparently to give up a lot of the revenue and for they themselves to bear some of the financial risk, which can be very, very punishing. So, I think there is, as I said, a lot of truth to this. He says one of the principles is that risk should be borne by the party best able to bear that risk, which in this case would be the publisher. So that would be the publisher, it says, which typically has the funds and assets that allow it to weather the risk. It's certainly not the indie studio or the developer who has sometimes nothing aside from the game it is trying to make. So I think when a CEO of a publishing company comes out and says that a lot of publishing companies are screwing over developers, there's probably a lot of truth to that. Again, take it with a grain of salt. It could just be he is trying to make Hooded Horse kind of stand out and look really good. I think that both things can be true here. I think there is obviously a ton of stuff probably that could be done. A lot of work could be done going forward that could hopefully protect a lot of these developers. Sometimes this is just why developers decide to go without a publisher. We see this from a lot of indie devs, and it really can help out and really work out for them in the end to just say, no, we're just going to take on all of this. But it doesn't make sense for all developers. So hopefully going forward, a lot of these contracts can make a lot more sense for developers.